I was sipping coffee on a gray Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with an email that nearly made me spill the entire cup. Notice of property transfer, the subject line read. My stomach tightened as I skimmed the message. It was official documentation, stamped and signed by the county office. The family home, the house my grandfather built with his own hands, the one I grew up in, the one we swore would never leave our bloodline, had been sold, and the seller's name was right there in black and white. My brother, Michael. My chest tightened. I scrolled again, convinced it had to be a mistake. But it wasn't. He'd listed himself as the sole owner, the only heir, as if I didn't exist at all. As if decades of memories, promises, and sacrifices meant nothing. For a moment, I just sat there, numb, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. Then the anger surged up, hot and sharp, burning through the shock. Michael hadn't even called me. No warning, no conversation, nothing. Just an email notification from the county telling me that the last piece of Grandpa's legacy had been signed away. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number with shaking fingers. It rang twice before he picked up. "Yeah?" he said, casual, like nothing was wrong. "Michael," I said, my voice trembling. "What the hell did you do?" Silence stretched for a beat. Then he sighed. "Oh, you found out. Look, Emma, it's not a big deal. The house was too much for us to maintain. Taxes, repairs. It made sense to sell." "Us?" I snapped. "You mean you. You didn't ask me. You didn't even tell me." He chuckled, low and dismissive, the same way he always did when he thought I was being dramatic. "You don't even live here anymore. You moved out years ago. I was the one keeping the place together. Don't act like you care so much now." His words hit like a slap, but underneath the anger, something else stirred. Determination. Because Michael had forgotten one crucial thing, Grandpa's will. I remembered sitting in the lawyer's office years ago, after the funeral, hearing the instructions read aloud. The property wasn't to be sold without the consent of both grandchildren. Both. That detail had burned itself into my memory, even when I was too grief-stricken to process much else. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "Michael, you didn't have the right to sell that house. Grandpa made sure of it." Another pause. His voice sharpened. "Don't start this, Emma. It's done. The papers are signed, the buyer's moving in next month. There's nothing you can do." But he was wrong. He didn't know I still had a copy of that will, tucked away in a binder at the back of my closet. Grandpa had trusted me to protect his wishes, and for the first time in years, I realized it was my turn to stand up for him, and for myself. That night I couldn't sleep. Every corner of my apartment felt suffocating. Memories of the old house flooded my mind. Grandpa teaching me how to ride a bike down the gravel driveway. The smell of cinnamon rolls Grandma used to bake every Christmas. The creaky staircase that I'd sworn was haunted when I was 7. It wasn't just a house. It was history, blood, roots, and Michael had tossed it away like it was an old piece of furniture cluttering his garage. By morning, my decision was made. I pulled out the binder, flipped through the worn pages, and there it was. The will, signed and notarized. Clear as day. The Mitchell family property shall not be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without the written consent of both heirs, Emma Mitchell and Michael Mitchell. My name, my signature required, and mine was nowhere on those county papers. The following week, I walked into the courthouse, clutching the binder like a shield. The clerk raised an eyebrow as I slid the documents across the counter. "Fraudulent sale," I said, my voice steady, even though my palms were slick with sweat. She scanned the will, her eyes narrowing, then looked back at me. "You'll need to file a petition to halt the transfer. If what you're saying checks out, the sale can be frozen until a judge reviews the case." Relief flickered through me. It wasn't over. Michael might have thought he'd buried me under paperwork, but Grandpa had left me the weapon I needed. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael, his voice tight with fury. "What did you do?" he hissed. "The buyer just called me. The sale's been delayed because of some petition. Was that you?" I didn't bother hiding my satisfaction. Yes, it was me, and I have Grandpa's will to back me up. For once, Michael didn't have a quick comeback, just ragged breathing on the other end of the line. Then, "You don't know what you're getting yourself into, Emma. Drop it. Now." But I wasn't dropping it. For years, Michael had acted like he was the golden child, the one who stayed close to home, the one who made the decisions, the one who got to play savior while I was cast as the ungrateful sister who left. But what he'd really been doing all along was lying, manipulating, and now I finally had the chance to stop him. The first hearing was scheduled for the week before Christmas. I remember walking into that courtroom, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Michael was already there, dressed in a sharp suit, sitting with his lawyer like he owned the place. He didn't even look at me as I slid into my seat. But when the judge called the case and I placed Grandpa's will on the table, his eyes finally flicked up. And for the first time, I saw something in them I'd never seen before. Fear. The judge's eyes flickered between the will and the transfer documents. His brow furrowed as he tapped his pen against the bench. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, addressing my brother, "this will explicitly states that both heirs must consent to the sale. How do you explain proceeding without your sister's signature?" Michael's lawyer jumped in before he could open his mouth. "Your Honor, we believe the document is outdated. The will was drafted nearly 20 years ago and circumstances have changed. My client was the sole caretaker of the property. He's been responsible for taxes, maintenance, and all financial burdens. It was within his right to proceed." I clenched my fists under the table, biting back the urge to shout. "Outdated? Circumstances?" Grandpa's words weren't vague suggestions. They were instructions, deliberate and binding. The judge raised an eyebrow but said nothing, simply motioning for me to speak. My voice shook at first, but it grew steadier with each word. "Your Honor," my grandfather was clear. "He didn't want the house sold without both of us agreeing. I may not have lived there these past years, but I have contributed. I paid off the roof repairs in 2018. I helped cover Grandma's medical bills when insurance wouldn't. This house is more than bricks and wood. It's a legacy, and my brother tried to erase me from it." Michael finally turned his head toward me, his face flushed with anger. "Erase you?" he spat. "You erased yourself the day you moved away. You left me here to deal with everything. Grandma's dementia, the leaking pipes, the endless taxes. You don't get to swoop in now and act like you care just because there's money involved." His words dripped with venom, but underneath it, I could hear the panic. The courtroom was silent, every ear tuned to our family drama. I swallowed hard and leaned forward. "This isn't about money, Michael. It never was. This is about respect, for me, and for Grandpa's wishes. You wanted to cash in on something that was never yours to sell alone." The judge scribbled notes, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, I thought Michael might lunge across the table, but instead he leaned back in his chair, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he shook his head violently, his eyes never leaving mine. As the session wrapped up, the judge declared that the sale would remain frozen until the authenticity of the will could be verified, and both parties could present full financial histories regarding the property. My chest loosened slightly. It wasn't over, but at least I had bought time. Michael stormed out of the courtroom without waiting for me, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. I gathered my papers slowly, deliberately, refusing to let him see me rush. Outside, the cold December air bit at my cheeks as I pulled my coat tighter. My phone buzzed with a new message, a group text from Mom. "What are you doing, Emma? Why are you dragging this into court? Your brother has been nothing but good to this family. You should be ashamed." My throat tightened as I read it again and again. Ashamed? Ashamed for protecting Grandpa's will, for refusing to be erased. Michael had gotten to her first, spinning his story, painting himself as the martyr, me as the greedy villain. For a moment, doubt gnawed at me, but then I remembered the look in Michael's eyes when the judge read those words from the will. Fear. He knew I wasn't bluffing, and for once I had leverage. That night I couldn't bring myself to go home. Instead, I sat at a diner across from the courthouse, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee as snowflakes drifted past the window. The waitress, a kind woman with tired eyes, refilled my mug without asking. "Rough day?" she said softly. I nodded, unable to explain the tangled mess of betrayal, anger, and determination coursing through me. I opened the binder again, flipping through Grandpa's documents. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. An envelope tucked into the back pocket, sealed and marked with Grandpa's handwriting. For the judge, if ever needed. My breath caught. My hands trembled as I slid the envelope out. The paper yellowed with age, but still crisp. Inside was a handwritten letter, notarized, addressed to the presiding authority in matters of my estate. My eyes raced over the words. Grandpa hadn't just left instructions. He'd left a warning. He wrote that he feared one heir might try to claim ownership without regard for the other, and that under no circumstances should the property be transferred without both signatures. My pulse thundered. This wasn't just evidence. It was a time bomb, and I was holding the match. The next morning, I woke up with the letter still clutched in my hand. My eyes were gritty from lack of sleep, but my mind buzzed with clarity. Grandpa had known. Somehow he had predicted that Michael would try to twist things, and he had left me the proof I needed to silence him. I made copies of the letter and tucked the original back into the binder. My phone had exploded overnight. Calls, voicemails, texts. Mom's messages had turned from scolding to pleading. "Emma, don't ruin Christmas over this. Just let your brother handle it. He knows what's best." My aunt chimed in too, accusing me of being selfish, of stirring drama for attention. It was like they'd all received the same script from Michael. For years, he had been the golden child, the one who stayed close, the one who could do no wrong, and I, the daughter who left, was the villain in their narrative. But not this time. This time I had the truth. When the second court session began, Michael was already there, leaning casually in his chair as if he hadn't spent the week spreading lies. His lawyer shuffled papers, clearly agitated. I took my seat, laying the sealed envelope carefully on the table. When the judge entered, the air shifted, tense and expectant. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to submit additional evidence. It's a notarized letter my grandfather left, specifically addressing the property I passed the envelope forward." Michael's head snapped toward me, his face draining of color. "What letter?" he demanded, his voice cracking despite his attempt to sound calm. The judge opened the document, reading silently for what felt like an eternity. When he finally looked up, his expression was sharper than before. "Mr. Mitchell," he said slowly, "this letter explicitly warns against exactly what you attempted. It strengthens the validity of the will. Can you explain why you chose to act unilaterally?" Michael stammered, his confident mask slipping. I thought, I didn't know." His lawyer put a hand on his arm, whispering urgently, but the damage was done. The courtroom had seen him cornered. During the recess, Michael cornered me in the hallway. His face was red, his jaw tight, his whisper harsh enough to feel like spit on my cheek. "Where did you get that letter? You're ruining everything. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stepped back, clutching my binder against my chest. "What I've done," I said, my voice low but steady, "is protect Grandpa's wishes. You tried to erase me, Michael. You tried to sell my inheritance, my history like I was nothing. But you forgot that Grandpa trusted me too. He saw right through you." His nostrils flared, and for a second I thought he might actually shove me. But then he smirked, that familiar arrogant twist of his mouth. "Fine," he said. "You've embarrassed me in court. But you think the family will stand by you? They'll never believe you over me. You'll end up alone." He stalked off before I could answer, his words echoing in my head like poison. Alone. That had always been his favorite weapon, isolating me, turning everyone else against me. And maybe once that would have worked. But now I had something stronger than their opinions. I had the truth, and the law on my side. That evening, back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and scrolled through social media. There it was, a post from Michael, carefully worded, painting himself as the victim. "Sad day for our family," it read, "trying to honor Grandpa's memory, but some people only care about money." Prayers appreciated, the comments were already pouring in. Cousins, old neighbors, even church friends chiming in with sympathy for him, and thinly veiled barbs aimed at me. My stomach churned. For a moment, I felt that familiar sting of humiliation, the urge to defend myself, to explain. But then I glanced at the letter sitting on my desk, the notarized words shining like armor. Let them talk, I thought. Let them believe his lies. Because soon the truth would be read aloud in a courtroom, undeniable and final. And no post, no spin, no whisper could save him then. The final hearing arrived like a storm. Snow fell in thick sheets outside the courthouse, muffling the city in silence. But inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. I sat with my binder open, the letter from Grandpa placed neatly on top, my hands folded tightly to stop them from shaking. Michael strutted in a few minutes late, his tie crooked, his eyes bloodshot. His lawyer looked exhausted, flipping through papers with a grim expression. As the judge entered, everyone rose, and then we sat, the air thick with anticipation. "We are here to resolve the matter of the Mitchell estate property," the judge began. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of finality. Michael's lawyer launched into a desperate argument, rambling about how Michael had borne the burden of the home, how I had abandoned my family responsibilities, how the sale was made in good faith. It was polished, rehearsed, but it couldn't erase the truth sitting in front of the judge in Grandpa's own handwriting. When it was my turn to speak, I rose slowly, my knees trembling but my voice clear. "Your Honor, I loved that house. I still do. I may not have lived there in recent years, but I never stopped being a part of it. My grandfather made his intentions clear. Neither of us had the right to act alone. This wasn't about convenience or who lived closest. This was about family, about trust. And my brother broke that trust. He didn't just try to cut me out. He tried to erase our grandfather's wishes." My words echoed in the quiet room. For once, Michael didn't interrupt. He sat rigid, his jaw locked, his fingers tapping a furious rhythm against the table. The judge leaned back, his gaze sweeping over both of us before settling on the letter once more. Then came the verdict. "After reviewing the will and the supplemental letter provided by the late Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, his voice deliberate, "it is the court's decision that the attempted sale of the property is void. Any transfer of ownership is hereby canceled. Furthermore, both heirs are ordered to appear before this court within 60 days with a joint plan for the future of the property, in compliance with the will's stipulations." A murmur rippled through the room. Michael's face turned crimson, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. His lawyer whispered something, but Michael shoved him away, glaring at me with a hatred so raw it almost made me flinch. Almost, but I didn't. For the first time in years, I held his gaze and didn't look away. As the courtroom emptied, Michael stormed past me, his shoulder slamming into mine. "You think you won?" he hissed. "All you've done is make sure we're stuck with each other forever. You'll regret this." His words rolled off me like water, because what he didn't realize, what he would never realize, was that I wasn't afraid of being stuck with him. I was afraid of being erased. And today, I had proved that I wouldn't be. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world blank and bright. I stepped onto the courthouse steps, inhaling the icy air like it was freedom itself. For the first time since that cursed email, I felt something other than anger or fear. I felt victory. The news spread through the family faster than wildfire. By the time I got home that evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop with messages. Some were scathing, accusing me of humiliating Michael, of being vindictive, of dragging our private issues into court. Others were quieter, almost hesitant, distant cousins and old family friends whispering that they'd always suspected Michael was too controlling, too eager to hold the spotlight. My mother, of course, left the harshest voicemail. "You've disgraced us, Emma. You embarrassed your brother in front of the whole town. Was that your plan all along? To tear this family apart?" I sat on the couch, listening to her words, and instead of crying like I used to, I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh, but a laugh all the same. Because for the first time, I realized something. They were never really protecting the family. They were protecting Michael's image, and I wasn't responsible for that anymore. Michael, meanwhile, didn't take the verdict quietly. Within days, he was on social media again, spinning new tales. He posted photos of the house, captioned with long rants about how he sacrificed everything to maintain it, how I had swooped in at the last minute to snatch away his efforts. His supporters lapped it up, commenting about ungrateful sisters and money-hungry women. But then the cracks started showing. Someone dug up the county documents and noticed my missing signature. Another pointed out that his posts contradicted themselves. First, he said the house was a burden. Then he claimed it was his life's work. By the end of the week, the tide was turning. Neighbors who'd seen Grandpa's devotion to me as a child began posting their own stories. An old family friend even commented, "Funny how Michael forgot Emma paid for Grandma's medical bills when he couldn't." For once, his mask was slipping, and people were seeing him for what he was. I kept quiet through it all, holding onto my silence like armor. The letter sat framed on my desk now, not because I needed proof anymore, but because it reminded me of Grandpa's faith in me. He had known the battles we'd face, and he had trusted me to fight them. One snowy afternoon, I drove out to the house. its familiar windows staring back at me like old friends. The yard was unkempt, the paint peeling, but it still felt like home. I stood on the porch, running my hand along the weathered railing, and thought about what the judge had said. 60 days to decide the future. Michael wanted to sell and pocket the cash. I wanted to restore it, maybe even move back, to breathe life into the place that had given me so much. The choice felt impossible, but standing there, I realized something important. No matter what happened next, Michael couldn't erase me. My name was on that will. My voice carried the same weight as his. The house wasn't his story alone. It was ours. And for the first time, I was ready to write my part. That night, as I packed up my binder and set it gently on the shelf, I felt lighter. The fight wasn't over, but the power had shifted. Michael could rage, he could post, he could scheme, but the truth was no longer on his side. It was on mine. For years, I'd been cast as the quiet sister, the one who left, the one who didn't care. But now the whole family, the whole town even, knew the truth. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't erased. I was the granddaughter Grandpa trusted, the heir who refused to be silenced, the woman who stood up in a courtroom and said, "Enough." And whatever came next, I would face it with my head held high. 60 days passed faster than I expected. Winter melted into the gray chill of early spring, and the deadline loomed like a clock I couldn't silence. Michael sent emails full of insults disguised as proposals. Sell immediately, split the money, pretend nothing had happened. Each one felt like a slap, a reminder of his arrogance, but I refused to respond. Instead, I met with a contractor, walked through the house, asked for estimates. The numbers weren't pretty. Repairs would cost tens of thousands. But as I stood in Grandpa's study, his old chair still by the window, the afternoon light pooling across the worn floorboards, I knew I couldn't let go. The house wasn't just wood and nails. It was memory. It was love. It was everything Michael could never understand. When the final hearing came, I walked in with a folder full of plans, savings projections, and a loan pre-approval. Michael came with nothing but anger. The judge listened patiently to both sides. Michael ranted about burdens and sacrifices, about how unfair it was that he had to share with me. His words dripped with the same entitlement that had driven him to sell the house behind my back in the first place. When it was my turn, I laid out the contractor's report, the financing options, the plan to restore the home. "I'm willing to take responsibility," I said firmly. "I will live here, maintain it, and ensure it stays in the family, just as my grandfather wanted. If my brother doesn't want that responsibility, he can sign over his share to me." Silence hung in the room. The judge nodded slowly, then turned to Michael. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have an alternative plan?" Michael shifted in his chair, muttered something under his breath, then shook his head. He had nothing. And so, with the stroke of a pen, the verdict was made. Michael was ordered to relinquish his claim in exchange for a modest payout, one far smaller than the profit he'd dreamed of from the secret sale. The house would be mine. My throat tightened as the gavel came down, the sound echoing like thunder. Relief crashed over me, heavy and sweet. Michael stormed out without looking back, his footsteps fading into nothing. I sat there for a long moment, letting the weight of it sink in. After all the lies, all the manipulation, all the years of being dismissed, I had won. Not just the house, but my voice, my place, my right to be heard. Months later, I moved into the house. The repairs were slow, messy, expensive, but every brushstroke of paint, every creak of newly sanded floorboards felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. On the first spring morning, I opened all the windows and let the breeze sweep through, carrying out the ghosts of old fights and filling the rooms with something new. Peace. Family members still gossiped, of course. Some chose Michael's side, others stayed quiet, but it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't living for their approval. One evening, I stood in the backyard, the same place Grandpa once taught me how to ride a bike, and whispered into the fading light, "I did it, Grandpa. I kept your promise," and in that moment I felt him there, not in the house itself, but in the strength I'd finally found to fight for myself. As I stood on that porch, looking out at the house I fought so hard to protect, I realized something important. This wasn't just about bricks, wood, or even Grandpa's will. It was about finding my voice when everyone tried to silence me. My brother thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd let him rewrite the story. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. What about you? If you discovered a sibling had stolen something meant to be shared, a home, an inheritance, a legacy, would you fight back, even if it meant tearing the family apart? Or would you walk away for the sake of peace? I'd love to hear what you would have done in my place.